中学的彭老师发表，大家请掌声欢迎他。I'm here to share with you what I have learned in SFU, and we did learn a lot from many inspiring teachers, and Helen is surely one of them. And I also learned with a lot of wonderful teachers, classmates, teachers from different schools. So the 5-week program really gave me a lot. So, and my topic is teaching textbook reading actively, and I will focus more on the use of graphic organizers. Alright, so when it comes to reading when it comes to the textbook reading, okay, most of the time what we do is we ask students to skim and scan, and then we ask them comprehension questions, then we cover the grammar points. However, we somewhat find the procedure a little bit tedious, so we wonder whether there are different ways to teach textbook reading, and if we can make textbook reading more interesting and more motivating. Also, instead of we teachers doing all the job, we hope that we can get students more involved in class and to be more responsible for their own learning. Okay, so in SFU, we learn a lot from many inspiring teachers throughout the program, and the inspiration of our action plan mainly came from several workshops. The first one is Margaret. Okay, she is the coordinator of the program, and she wants to encourage us to increase the use of graphics. And she said that if the students can put the content into the graphics, then it means that they understand. And another teacher, Don, also introduced a series of graphic organizers in his class. Another session, learning in and through the arts. Our instructor, Paula, talked about the effectiveness of different ways of learning at the beginning of her class. As you can see, if we just give students a reading text and we ask them to read by themselves, they can only absorb 10% of what they read. So if we talk about the reading and they hear and read, probably they can learn 30% of the reading. So to enhance the students' learning, we have to try our best to get them involved in class. So have them engage in class as much as possible. So a saying goes, the one who does the talking does the learning. So I would have to say that the 5-week program in SFU indeed gave me a chance to personally experience that hands-on activities such as group work or presentation. They really facilitated our learning and allowed us to retain the information for a longer period of time. Okay, so and that's what I try to keep in my lesson plan. So I think that probably most of the teachers are already familiar with the graphic organizer, so I'll just briefly talk about different types of graphic organizers and the graphic organizers that we are often used. So the first type is conceptual graphic organizers, like star or cluster. And these type of graphic organizers are used to show definition, attributes, examples, and brainstorming. Another type is hierarchical graphic organizers, like tree diagrams. They are used to show classification, structures, examples, and also it can be used when doing the brainstorming. And another type is sequential graphic organizers. They are used to show processes, sequences, cause and effect, and the like timeline, right? Okay, so if you are not certain what type of graphic organizers you should use, there is even a graphic organizer for choosing a proper graphic organizer. Okay, so if you're interested, you can just get on this website. There are tons of collections of ready-to-use graphic organizers online. Okay, so in my action plan, I try to apply the activities we learned in SFU to the classroom use of graphic organizers. And I'd like to share how I use graphic organizers as before, during, or after reading activities. And I teach 10th and 11th graders this year, and the textbook we use is Sanming English textbook. Okay. So the first example I would like to share is a warm-up activity I use when teaching Sanming Book 3, Unit 9. A memorable event is a narrated article about Chaplin's first appearance on stage, which was a memorable event to him because that's how Chaplin started his performing career. So in the warm-up activity, students work in pairs. Okay, by reading the title, A Memorable Event, I ask them to think about what questions they would like to ask if they are going to ask a friend about his or her memorable event. So I ask them to write down their questions on the worksheet. Okay, and as they work in pairs, I could hear them murmur like when, who, where, how, why. So you know that students are trained really well by our comprehension questions, right? So, but I ask them to elaborate their WH words into the full questions. So they write down their questions, and this is one of the examples. Okay, they write down when did it happen? Okay, who were you with? Okay, what did you do? And how did it influence you? And they actually came up with really good questions. So later on, I asked them to read the reading again, scan the reading, and try to find out the answer to their questions and write them down at the bottom. Okay, so most of their questions could be answered or inferred from the reading. And after doing this activity, they got a rough picture about what the reading is about. Okay, so that's what I did in class. But you can also use these graphic organizers for further activities. For example, we can do speaking activities. Okay, we can ask students to think about their own memorable event, and they can use these questions to ask each other about their memorable event. And also, they can write an essay based on these questions. Okay, so another before reading activity is tips for improving your memory. Okay, so another before reading activities is collective memory. Okay, so this is an exciting game that we learn in SFU. In Sanming Book 2, Unit 3, Tips for Improving Your Memory, okay, there are 7 tips mentioned in the reading. So this is the graphic organizers I made. Okay, so what the students do is I ask them to work in groups of 4 at the same table. Okay, and then the first member from each group will have to come to the front of the classroom where I held the photo with me, okay, and they have 10 seconds to look at the graphic organizers, and they have to try to remember what's in that picture as much as possible for 10 seconds. And after 10 seconds, they have to go back to their group, and they have to try to draw as much as possible, draw as much as they can remember. Okay, so so they have 1 minute to draw their pictures. And after 1 minute, the next member comes to look at the image, returns, and begins to draw, adding on to the first drawing. So, and in class, before the third member had a chance, my students asked me to give them some time to discuss. So I said, okay, you can have 1 minute to talk about what to do next. So the first and the second member could tell the third and fourth member what to look at. So the following members would know better what to look at. And they can consider the strategy for success. Because the success of the activity will be based on the accuracy of their representation of that graphic organizer. So and at the end of the activity, students walk around the classroom and appreciate other groups' work. So this is a photo I took in SFU, and you can see that the teacher, Tola, is in front of the classroom, and our teacher are trying really hard to memorize what's in that photo. And then they have to come back and draw their part. So this is the graphic organizer I held on my hand. And this is one of my students' work story that it looks like a blank because they have to use the pencil and eraser because they have to draw really quickly and they have to probably erase and make corrections, so they just use pencil to draw their pictures. So since this lesson is about tips for improving memory, so in the end, we discussed about what strategies they use during the activity. And also, we talked about whether they can, what other memory strategies they apply when they study, and also whether they can apply these strategies into their studies. And of course, this activity can be applied to any topic. The paper the teacher holds in the hand could be a poem, could be advertisement, could be anything, right? So it can be varied according to your topic, and questions for discussion may also vary according to the focus. So next I will talk about using graphic organizers as during or after reading activities. And the simplest way is to use it as a comprehension check. So we can just give students a graphic organizer and ask them to complete the graphic organizer. This is useful when the reading has a really clear structure. So, for example, studying Book 1, Unit 7, Inventing a Better World, we can use the hierarchical graphic organizer, can use the tree diagrams for that. And for studying Book 3, Unit 6, The Warmer the World, since it's an article about the cause and effect of global warming, so the students can use the cause and effect, the sequential graphic organizer for this lesson. So graphic organizers can help students focus when they are reading, and also it can help to clarify students, it can help to clarify the structure of the reading. And quadrants of thought is another type of graphic organizers that we learned in SFU. It can be used when the reading is a story. So in SFU we labeled the 4 quadrants as image, words, and questions, and emotions. But when teaching studying Book 1, Unit 2, A Lesson in Forgiveness, it's a story about a boy who broke an old lady's window and how he expressed his sorry and regret. So I asked students to fold the paper in 4 and labeled vocabulary, image, question, and also adjectives. I made a little adaptation because there are lots of adjectives used in the story. So as I read the story, the students, or I play the CD, the students try to record what's going on in their mind or what they have heard. So in the vocabulary quadrant, they try to write down the keywords that they hear. And for the adjective quadrant, they write down the adjectives they hear in the reading. For the image quadrant, they try to draw pictures, try to sketch. So what kind of images appear in their mind when listening to the story. And for question quadrant, it's used to write down the questions they have about this story. This is one of my students' work. Again, sorry, it's used with the pencil. But you can see that because they are just 10th graders and this is the second lesson that they learned, so there's several spelling mistakes, but I think it's okay because you can see they really came up with some good pictures because it's about a broken window. So they had a broken window there, okay, and they actually came up with really good questions because they already seem to have known that the boy had broken his window before he made an apology. So they asked why did she know, when did she know, right? So this is a good way to train students to do something more than just listen or read a story. They can actually try to draw something down, and they can also try to think when they listen to the story. Okay. So graphic organizer can be a really good way to check students' comprehension, but students may feel bored as it becomes another type of homework that the teacher assigns, right? So, inspired by our group members, I started to add some variety. So, group work is one way I tried. So, when teaching Sanming Book 3, Unit 11, Coming Back with Thunder, okay, which is an article, a very long essay about the development of globe puppetry in Taiwan. So the reading is really lengthy and it's quite challenging. So before we go into the reading, I asked them to work in pairs. Okay, again, each student has a worksheet. Okay, so they work in pairs and try to look for the time mentioned in the article. So when they find out the time, they write down the year or the date on the left-hand column on the worksheet. So this is the first procedure. And then I play the CD, have them listen to the reading. This time they have to try to find out what happened during those periods of time. So after, it took about like 5 minutes to do this. And after that, I divide students into groups, okay? So in my large class, I have a class of 49, okay? So I divide them into groups of 7. So in the group, each group gets a poster. So they have to try to draw the timeline by themselves in 8 minutes. And once they finish their work, they have to race to stick to their poster to the blackboard. And I said that the first 4 groups who finish their work and stick it to the blackboard will win the bonus points. And among the first 4 groups, the group that have the most accurate graphic organizers will win the highest bonus points. So I don't know if you can see that clearly. For the last photo, students, in order to win that 10 bonus points, they can even decorate something on the blackboard in 8 minutes. Okay. So in this activity, students work together to complete this graphic organizer. So they learn the content of reading not only through their own reading, but also through the discussion with their partner and also through the discussion with the other group members. Okay. So after this activity, surely they will know what this long article is about. So next activity, this is their work. Okay. So I'm really amazed by their work because they only have 8 minutes and they can do such a wonderful job. Okay, so another activity I have tried is group presentation. Okay, Sanming Book 3, Unit 8 is a lesson about the origin of the presidential pardon of the Turkey on Thanksgiving, also the origin of Thanksgiving, okay, the first feast of Thanksgiving dinner. So in this article, I used the story map, but I will skip the procedure of this activity because later on, Wu Fei老师 will talk about how she conducted this activity in the Yedong English textbook. So I would like to show you the story map, okay, the worksheet my students did. So as you can see, students can not only use words to complete their graphic organizer, they could also draw pictures. Okay, so for visual learners, it's a good way for them to show how to demonstrate their understanding of the article. And I'm really happy with this because it's easier to correct. You can see that they have very cute pictures, yeah. Okay, so next activity is tableaux. Okay, so tableaux is an activity in which students create frozen images in small groups based on key themes. In SFU, our instructor Paula showed us a painting of Monet, and then she had several classmates came to the stage. Okay, so I couldn't find a photo for that, so I have to describe it. So a guy would have to lie on the floor, and then there will be two ladies sitting on the floor facing that guy lying there, and then there will be like 3 or 4 guys and ladies standing around them. So they have to recreate this frozen frame. So their poses have to be exactly the same with what is like in the painting, and then they cannot move at all until the teacher touches one of them. So like if the teacher touched the man lying on the floor, then he had to pretend that he was the man in that painting, and he had to imagine that in that situation, what would be in that man's mind. So I remember that the guy in our class said that those two girls look quite beautiful or something like that. Yeah. So they have to pretend they are the members there, and they have to say something out loud. Okay. So this is tableaux. And what I did is when I teach the Sanjing version, Book 1, Unit 10, The Phantom of the Opera. Okay. This is the story that most students are familiar with. So after introduce the background of the Phantom, that is the first 2 paragraphs of the reading, I divide students into 4 groups, and I give each group a worksheet. So, and each group is assigned a paragraph. So in 15 minutes, they have to decide upon the key events in the paragraph. Okay, so they have to draw 1, 2, 3 frozen frames. Okay. Just draw 1, 2, 3 pictures to tell what happened in that paragraph. So this is my students' drawing. So it's okay because they perform really well. You can see that for the frozen frame. Okay, on stage. Okay, they have to do exactly the same in their frozen frame, and but I made a little variation as well. I didn't touch them because I'm afraid that they will be too nervous to perform on stage. So I allow them to have a narrator. Okay, so a narrator will tell the story, and then okay, the other members, each one needs to have a role, and they play the story. They act out that paragraph. And there is a video clip for another group. On the night of the opera, strange things started to happen. A woman lost her voice, a man was killed, and the nurse from the building. Everyone in the opera house was horrified. That good at speaking, but I did think that they did a wonderful job again. Okay, so next next lesson, in the next lesson, I show them the pictures from each group. So that would be paragraph 3, 4, 5, and then 6 and 7. Okay, I show them the pictures they drew, and I ask them to recall what they have acted and what their classmates acted in the previous lesson, and they took turns to retell the story. So after this activity, everyone is familiar with this story. Okay. So these are the activities I did with the use of graphic organizers. And feedback from students, according to the questionnaire, about 90% of the students think graphic organizers help them understand the articles better, also help them clarify the structure of the articles, and also they think that graphic organizers help them in the retention and recall of the information. Also, when working on graphic organizers, 15 of the students prefer to work alone. 27 of them prefer to work with a partner, and 58% of them prefer to work in a group. So here comes my reflection. Okay, since our job is to provide students with a safe learning environment, so to meet the different needs of the students, we better allow them to work by themselves or work with a partner before going to a larger group. Okay, and secondly, I used to think that I had such a tight schedule that I didn't have any time for any activity. But in this semester, I learned that doing activities doesn't really have to be time-consuming, and it can only take like 15 minutes. But spending some time energizing students and enhancing their learning is definitely worth it. Last but not least, when the students do the talking, they do the learning. So you never know how well they can perform until you give them a chance to show you. Maybe their performance will amaze you, as my students do. Thank you.